We have another case of a extrajudicial execution. By the gendarmes of democracy. Otherwise known as the police. This one occurred with a person who was sleeping in his car outside of a Wendy's. After they gave him a breathalyzer test and he failed that, they tried to arrest him. And that's the point at which he tried to evade them, tried to run away from them. Took a taser, a non-lethal weapon, more of a protection for him, and tried to run away. And he was shot while trying to run away. Those are the facts of it. First of all, it's entirely reasonable for this fellow to have tried to avoid getting arrested because numerous recent reported accounts of people of a darker skin getting arrested and then killed meant that it was a rational choice for him, a game theoretic choice for him, rather than submit to something that was near certain death at the hands of the police. He took his chances and tried to avoid being placed in that vulnerable situation. Of course, we had the case of George Floyd, who was placed in that vulnerable situation and complied with it, and then was murdered. So there should be no aspersions cast on this individual for resisting arrest. He's trying to resist getting killed. Second, there are a number of ways that this would have been handled much better by a social worker, by somebody who had the role of a philanthrope, a do-gooder, who was nonetheless a officer of the court, but merely from the standpoint of gathering evidence, reporting things. He was sleeping in his car, so first of all, they could have taken his license plate, his tags, immediately jotted them down, run them through, find out who owned the vehicle, and whether they had a driver's license. All this without even bothering him while he's sleeping. And with two of these philanthropes, one of them could have knocked on the window, as the police officer did. Get him to get out of his car, verified his identity, which he, by taking the breathalyzer test, he had shown that he would have complied, and I think that most people would. Just don't arrest me. Okay, here's the driver's license. They jot that down. It's the breathalyzer test, which could also have medical reasons. So make sure he doesn't have alcohol poisoning. So this would be all within the range of somebody who is simply there to help. but has the legal authority to request the information and to administer the test. At any point in this, after knocking on the car window, if he decided he was going to run away, one of the philanthropes could have taken the car to the impounding lot, and the other could have called for a dragnet. We've gotten a situation here that's within the bounds of not abolishing the police, but sending out these philanthropes instead to deal with these human issues. And if he had not run away, instead of arresting, which would not be one of their functions as a philanthrope, they explained that my partner here is going to take your car to the impounding lot, and somebody from your family that has a valid driver's license without a DUI can go and retrieve it, and they can use it. Your license will be suspended for a period of time. And meanwhile, if you like, I can give you a ride home. And because it's a philanthrope and it's not a police officer, could have done that. Now, if we don't have the philanthropes, how would a police officer respond to in a similar manner? Well, pretty much as I described. They would gather the information, they would call in, they have all they need, and if the police officers are sent out without guns and without taser maybe, but certainly if it's known that they're going out without guns, then this person might be more inclined to go with them, as long as they don't do the handcuff business. And even if they didn't want that, there's really not that much of a reason to bring them in, except to expedite the case. And again, if they try to flee, try to pursue them, everybody's already left. He doesn't have the car. The drunk person does not have the car. And he's fleeing on foot. Again, he's out of a dragnet. He went in this direction, I'm here. Let's bring the circle in. And eventually we will corner him. And one of us will wrestle him. So there are ways of doing something like this without shooting somebody who is fleeing the scene of a crime. And this is really just a traffic violation. It's hardly a crime. But this could have been done in a peaceful manner. The other thing that I'd like to bring up in conjunction with this is that back when I was young, my mom would discuss some current discussions in public debate with me. One of those was whether we should make the police more like the bobbies in London. In other words, they don't have a gun. And I agreed with her that we should do that, that there is no reason for the police to have a gun in the normal course of duties. It's acting as if they're a soldier of the Fine Army, rather than, in more of the case of the bobbies, a constabulary that is just trying to make sure that things are in good order for the population of their city of London, and here, the city of Atlanta, just to make sure that things are reasonable. Of course, I'm in the city of New York, which would greatly benefit from a disarmed police, just as a first step to transitioning over to a system that doesn't need police, and to a system that would not be in a domestic arms race with a alternative political economy. We need to disarm the police for their regular duties. Like the Bobbies in London, they have armed perpetrators that are preventing their arrest by virtue of their own weaponry. Then at that point, the Bobbies, or in our case the police, go back to the police station and they do get a few weapons so that a few people can do the shootout, if that's what it comes down to. There's no reason for a patrol officer to have a weapon. And yet another point, following in on what I was saying about disarming the police, is that we need to create a situation where there is no need for an alternative political economy. Instead, we provide the necessities without disqualifying conditions or requirements that people are not able to fulfill, especially during the Great Depression too, that we've had since 2008, since fall 2008, when we created this huge debt increase and sank the small business, local business environment. So that would be done more on a federal level, and that would be a $1,500 weekly citizen stipend. And I discussed this in numerous other videos and articles and so on. You can look that up. It's $1,500 weekly citizen stipend. Let's see if I have a tag for it. What that would do is prevent what leads into having a armed black market, a crime problem, a criminal state, by first making it pointless for pickpockets and burglars to ply a trade which gives them no more money, in fact, quite a bit less than what they would get simply by receiving a $1,500 weekly citizen stipend. And by removing that incentive for crime, that crimes of necessity, we prevent a situation where the police come with a gun to arrest the burglar, and then the whole economy of burglars decides, oh, well, we need some protection too. And then there are other people that will provide that protection to them. And a whole artifice of the state is created, of this alternative state is created. Again, another unnecessary death, one that's created by having an armed police force that shoots first and asks questions later, doesn't allow the person that is to be arrested, or more properly, to be brought before the court, to have their day in court. Instead, we have the police as not just the arresting officers, but as the prosecutor, the judge, and the jury. And that's why I call extrajudicial execution. And in many of these police departments, because of this attitude that they need to go out there and enforce the law and take on the functions of the judicial branch and the executive branch, and in many cases the legislative branch of every level of government. Instead of having that process, we would have one where they need to be just simply a peaceful arrester of somebody and reporting the crime to the prosecutors. And yes, there's another point here, one final one, okay. And that is that many of these police forces, as we've been discovering about in Indianapolis, are hooked up on steroids so that they resemble very much the assassins, the hashishans in the Middle East, who were given hashish in order to enable them to execute the leader of a rival faction or country without remorse, without hesitation. So there's another area where we need to make sure that if we're going to retain this unconstitutional institution, that we tone it down a bit, as they toned it down in London. And that is no drugs. Every single police officer needs to be tested for drugs before they go out. And it needs to be done by an independent examiner so that they are not hooked up on some drug that is going to turn them into assassins. So, first of all, their mission should be that of a philanthrope, somebody who is looking for the betterment of their fellow man. And they should not have guns on patrol. No guns on patrol. And in cases of a city like New York, particularly the borough of Manhattan, they should not be driving tanks. That's what police cruisers are. They're an armored vehicle. So no arms for the police. They should walk the beat without a gun, and they should be tested before they go out on patrol for any use of drugs of any kind. It might not be a bad idea also to test them for diseases. We need, if we're going to have this police entity, they need to be patrol officers, they need to be walking the beat, they need to not have a gun, and they need to not have a car, and they need to be tested. So those are the 5 points of a reform that maintains a police